Good morning, listeners and followers. Thank you for joining me today for our podcast, In This World, a podcast for life's journey through tough times. I'm Lori Wiegand Jackson, and we're in Series 2, Change and Transitions. And in the next few episodes, I'm going to be speaking about one of the most important relationships that we can have, which is our marriage relationship. So let's get started. So, we're going to be talking about marriage, and I want to start from what I would say is the beginning of that relationship. So when you first think that, oh, could this be the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with? And we are hoping with marriage relationships that they do last a lifetime and that you will grow together, that you will have a deeper relationship over time, that you'll experience that, one love of a lifetime that you're looking for. So I'm going to talk about how do we get there? And this gets into building that relationship and having an ability to discern throughout that relationship, is this the one that leads to marriage? And so when we start out in relationships, there's a variety of reasons why we're attracted to each other, why we're drawn to each other. In a prior episode, we talked about friendships, and I think there's a lot of really good information there because truly, in building a relationship that ultimately leads to marriage, ideally, we are looking for a very good friend that will become our helpmate, our partner for life. So there are things that draw us together and things that you have in common, whether it's geographic location, education, things that you do in your careers, things that you do for fun, hobbies, interests, past life experiences, things that you have in common. And what I will say is that it does help to have these commonalities because that's what you're going to start to build your relationship on. At the same time, finding someone who has different character traits than yourself. In essence, we talk about that kind of filling in the gaps, if you will, is also not a bad thing. Being somewhat more quiet or introverted and being drawn to a person who's more outgoing is not an unnatural thing. In fact, it's very natural to be drawn to someone who has perhaps some traits that you don't have. But in that respect, it's always important to recognize that where there are those differences, you're looking for differences that are in some degree of moderation. If it's too extreme, then that can ultimately lead to some challenges down the road in terms of discomfort or comfort levels and ultimately even conflict. So, when we think about those relationships and are they going to lead ultimately to marriage, we start with these commonalities, things that you share, and then we look for the things that are different and really look at how does that fit what you're looking for in a relationship. These assessments kind of along the way, and that sounds kind of analytical, and relationships are very much emotional as well as logical, right? Sometimes it seems illogical, but there's very much a logic to it. But there's a lot of emotion that's happening in relationships as well. And we want to be doing some of this discernment and these steps along the way before we get too deep in and maybe then start having what I would call rose colored glasses. If your nature is to see the best in people, then you're not going to see those flags that could be something that you say, oh, that may not be what I want to spend the rest of my life with, someone who has this trait or that trait. And there are some that are flags that I would say and have told younger people, kind of run far and run fast. Like that is a red flag. So let's start with, again, the shared interests. Those are the things that you're going to be able to have conversations about, be very engaged in those conversations. But what you want to look for is this a person who not only shares, but also listens, who doesn't just listen or doesn't just share things that are very superficial, but is willing to actually have some legitimate conversations around topics that are important to you. So those subjects could be anything from faith. What do you believe in terms of God and religion? And do you align there? It is important to know where you stand on things like family. Do you want to have children? What does that look like to you? How was your family experience growing up? And how does that translate into how you think you'd be raising a family in the future? Relationships with parents. I think it's good to see and understand what do those relationships look like. And so you're going to be looking at how do they relate with their families members, and that can help you understand how they would be relating to you and your family members and within your own family structure if you ever get to that point of marriage and having a family. You are looking for other areas of commonality in terms of interest, because this is where you can start doing things together. Do you both like gardening or going to gardens? Do you both like to travel? Do you both like to read? Do you both like to do outdoor activities? Do you like sports? What are those things that draw you together that you can do together? At the same time, though, do a little testing. See if this person is willing to go along with you to something that you really love, but isn't really something that is high on their radar. And that doesn't mean that you have to go along to everything that other person loves to do, or vice versa. They have to come along to everything that you love to do. Because in a relationship, you still are two separate people. You have your own individual self, and that doesn't go away even in marriage. You are still two people, even though you cleave together in marriage and you become one unit in marriage, but you are still two unique people. But you want to see, and this goes for yourself as well, this could be an area of growth for yourself, which is how willing are you to do something that's maybe outside of your comfort zone, maybe something, that you didn't really have an interest in, but for the benefit of the other person and to learn more about them and to grow in your relationship with them, that you're going to want to try that and do it together. So I know that in my marriage relationship, when we first started dating, my husband really loves to play chess. He's very good at it. I probably learned to play chess at a very basic level in high school and haven't really played much chess since then. But I know it was something that he really enjoyed. So I definitely jumped in. He was very easy on me, I'd have to say. That was very enlightening to see that he wasn't just beating me with a lot of enthusiasm at winning. Yes, he won almost every match that we played, but he was very full of grace about it, and he was trying to teach me, and I was open to learning. So that's one example where you basically go outside your comfort zone, you do something that you wouldn't normally do, but you do it for the benefit of the relationship and to learn more about each other and to see each other in these different circumstances. The So you build on the commonalities, but you also stretch into those areas of interest that each other has that you don't share. Then I would say that you're starting to look at character, which is really important, right? So the initial attraction, maybe it's more physical, maybe it is because of commonalities. And those are probably the two things I think that draw people together the most is physical attraction and then things you have in common. But once you get there and you spend some time together and you are enjoying each other's company, now it's time to really start to discern what is this person's character? Who is this person really? And you want to look at those character traits that are important to you and be sure that your partner has those traits. So, are you looking for someone who is faithful? A person who will be loyal to you? Is that important? Are you looking for someone who is honest? Are you looking for someone who is empathetic, who has strong emotional intelligence? Are you looking for someone who has a great sense of humor? Make your list. In fact, before you even start dating someone and you get on this journey of relationships, I encourage you to make a list of the character traits that are the most important to you. You don't necessarily have to number them, but just create a list. Doesn't have to be a hierarchy, but just these are the things that are the most important to me. So that when you do start relationships with people and you get to a point where you've developed some rapport and common interests and you're spending some time together, that you can start to look at that person and see, do they have the traits that are important to me? And I think that's where a lot of relationships go awry and people have struggles, is that they don't do that inventory early enough on, and then they get very attached, and then they're willing to overlook some of the character traits that they know are important to them, but now they're already invested. So How do you discern if a person has a character trait or not? Well, you're going to do that mainly through two things. One is conversations. So you're going to have some conversations, some scenarios, maybe some examples of things that have happened to you in your past, things that have happened at work, and ask them what their take is. What would they do in that situation? It's very revealing to ask people these questions. And I think generally people are willing to answer and give advice. So, in the giving of that advice and the listening, really listen carefully to what they're saying. Don't try to cover things up or color things differently. And if you're not sure what the person is saying, be sure to ask more questions. Could you explain that to me? I'm not sure I understand, or wow, that's an interesting perspective. Tell me more. And so you learn about these different character traits through scenarios, through experiences. Ask them about their life experiences. Have you ever been in a relationship where someone has been unfaithful? Was it you? Was it them? Have you ever been unfaithful in a relationship? How did that go? What did you do? Taking the time to do this, I wouldn't call it work because really I think it's part of the exploration of the other person, that you're trying to learn who they are, which is an exciting part of building relationships. So don't be superficial in the conversations that you're having. If you think that this is a possibility, that this could ultimately lead to a long term relationship and ultimately marriage, definitely make the investment. Because what you don't want to have happen is that you spent months or years in a relationship thinking it's going to head in that direction, only to find out that this is not the right person for you. So, for the benefit of both parties, it's a great thing to go through this process. So, in order to have a successful marriage, it really starts out by taking the time to get to know the person, really know them, and see them for who they really are. Again, don't put on those rose colored glasses. Don't just see the best in the person. Delve in. Find out who this person really is. Do not expect someone to change. I know you've heard this before, but I'm telling you again, when a person tells you who they are, believe them. Don't think that you have some amazing power that is going to cause a person to change. Now, hopefully, in a healthy relationship, you both grow together. You both grow as individuals and you grow together in your relationship. And growth does mean change, but that's different than saying, oh, there's this thing about this person that I really don't like, but I'm just going to be like ignoring it for now because I think they'll change over time. No, that's a really bad strategy and one that'll often lead in heartbreak when you have to break up with that person because truly they are not changing. And you should never have had the expectation that they would. And even sometimes people will say, well, I will change. Like when you say, well, I think this is it. I'm going to move on. People will make a lot of promises. That's never a good time for somebody to be making promises, right? To try to keep you in a relationship. What you can say in those cases is, well, you know what? If that's important to you to make those changes, go ahead and make those changes. And if I'm still available, reach back out to me and we can reconnect and kind of see how that's going with you and where I'm at and maybe we'll come back together again. So let that be an important point that you carry with you in the development of your significant relationships that you're looking to lead to ultimately marriage. So we start out with this foundation that's building a friendship that's based on common interests, and you're getting to know each other. And now you're to the point, and this can happen. There is no like specific time frame, right? I can't tell you that this is step one, will take this much time, etc. Relationships really run their own course, and it depends on how much time you have to invest in with each other and also just how quickly and how open you are with each other as far as how long it takes and where you each are, because you may be wanting to take things very slow. You may have both have come out of past relationships where things have been kind of difficult and painful and you want to take things slow. So either way, no specific time frame, but when you get to that point where you're thinking, okay, I think this could be the person that I would spend the rest of my life with. We're now crossing over into a different level of relationship. And I'm going to talk about marriage And I'm going to wrap up this episode by just in general talking about marriage relationships and what to expect in those relationships. And then in the next few episodes, we'll talk about um, different things to do to help you in developing and coming together in advance of your marriage and then during your marriage to hopefully sustain and have a very successful marriage. I have been married, just so you know, for 22 years. I also had been married once previously, right out of college, to my college sweetheart. Lasted 5 years. We were divorced in 7, no children in that first relationship. But it was a real heartache for me, and I'm sure for him as well, that our marriage didn't work out. And so I learned some things from that. I spent some time as a single adult and then ultimately found my husband. And so I do feel like I have the experience to be sharing this all with you. And I appreciate you listening in today on this episode. So let's dig into marriage. So when two people marry, again, I talked about them being individuals, which we are, and we're used to being our own decision makers, our own life planners. We have been an individual our whole lives. As young children, we depend on our parents, but then we become adults and we become these independent people. And when we talk about marriage, it's about a significant transition from being that fully independent person to now cleaving to another person, to becoming a unit together, and to become dependent on that person in some ways and them becoming dependent upon you, to having joint decision making processes, to losing some independence. It is a different kind of relationship. In ways, we are surrendering to each other in a very positive way. So being willing to release this idea of I'm in control of my life to the common we are now making decisions about our life, moving from the I and me to the us and we. It takes some effort. Now, hopefully, as you've been building up over time in the development of the relationship, you've been practicing some of this. But when you get into marriage and you make that commitment for a lifetime, well, now you're going to have life experiences coming at you that you have to address together. And in order to have a successful marriage, you definitely want to be addressing them together. You don't want to be taking issues and kind of hiding them off to the side, trying to either protect your partner, or maybe you think it will protect your relationship if the person doesn't know something is happening. Well, that is not good for marriage. Transparency, openness, honesty is very important in marriage, even for difficult challenges. You have a health situation. I know so many people who just want to keep that to themselves and not share that with their partner. Your partner should know. It is only fair that they know, just so they can support you and help you and be not blindsided by what comes next. If it is a career situation, you just, lost your job or you didn't get that promotion, you want to share these things with each other because you want to share your dreams and aspirations, and you want to share your challenges and your disappointments. There is no better person to be doing all that with than your spouse, than with your life partner. Because truly, there is no one in the world who is going to love you the way that your husband or wife will love you. And that love is really what makes the marriage relationship so unique, because it is the closest thing, I believe, to a selfless love as we can get. When we come together and say, I will love you as I love myself. I will put you in the process of my whole life as important as I am. Or at times, I will elevate you to be even more important than myself. That's true love. and that is marriage. And you don't ever want to say that you would diminish yourself permanently. There is no hierarchy. Now, I know some who would argue that no, there is a hierarchy. They would typically say that it is the male over the female. And I will say this, that while scripture in the Bible talks about the man being the head of the household, and that is true in my marriage, my husband is the head of our household. That doesn't mean that I am less than him. We are partners, we are equals. I am his helpmate, he is the head of our household. What does that mean? It means that we come together for all decisions. It means that he loves me as himself and I love him as myself. That means that when we're making decisions, we consider each other in those decisions, right? Not just ourselves. Successful marriage is truly based on love and respect. Love and respect for each other. So men must love and respect their wives, and women must love and respect their husbands. So with that premise of what marriage is, getting to that point where you can put someone ahead of yourself at times is really going to be necessary. And I will tell you that it really is the precursor to helping you when you decide, if you decide to have a family. Because when you have children that are fully dependent on you, you absolutely have to put them ahead of yourself at many times because of their needs. So marriage is really preparing us for that as well. In love, sacrifice is part of love. That means that I'm going to learn to compromise. I'm going to learn to not have my way all the time. At the same time, it cannot be an all and nothing, right? It cannot be. Nor is it something where it's kind of like you're keeping track. Well, I did this for you. Now you need to do this for me. That isn't how it works either. But a healthy marriage is going to be that give and take, and it'll have an ebb and flow. But if there is respect and love, that will happen organically. We've talked in the past about communication in relationships. Communication is really critical for a successful marriage. When people talk about what makes a marriage last a lifetime, love and respect, and then communication. So, utilizing the tools that we've talked about in the past, having that open communication, really listening to each other, giving yourself time. You know, a lot of times with careers or family or other situations that are going on, you know, hobbies that you're fully invested in, you lose time for each other. So making sure that you have time to have those conversations is really important. Allow yourself to keep that relationship strong with open communication. Part of that too is having date nights. Once you get married, don't forget that dating is what brought you into marriage, and you want to keep that love strong. Make sure you make time for each other. Life can really pull you away and you just take each other for granted. And a lot of times that's where people start to feel distant and things start to change in the relationship. So make that time for each other. Do your date nights, have fun together. Again, be willing to do the things that brought you together in the first place. Keep that going, and try new things together. I would say part of what's been really fun about our marriage is that willingness to travel to new places and explore together, and that's just been fascinating for both of us. Trying to learn new languages as we travel to places. You know, these are all things that we've tried to do together. Working out in the gym, we've tried to do that, you know, that together. Lots of things that we do together that helps keep us strong in our marriage. The So we talked about love, respect, communication, and the idea of sort of keeping it connected, taking, you know, putting in the time, trying some new things, keeping it fresh. These are all things that are going to help you to build a strong marriage relationship. So I'm going to wrap it up here. And when we come together next, I'll talk more about specifically some things you can do in preparation for marriage, some books, some counseling that can help you tackle some of the tough questions. Really just be sure you're on the same page, or if you're not, that you're still okay with where you both come from and you've reached some compromises. Important dialogues to have in preparation for marriage. So, with that, I'm going to wrap up today and thank you for joining me. And I look forward to having you listen in again next episode.